Welcome back to the new and improved Best Captain series. I've introduced some charts so it's easier for you as the viewer to analyse the data. Before we get straight into it, this is your one-stop shop for Captaincy till Game Week 38, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Now let's take a look at the fixtures. First of all, the game at the top is a nice tasty fixture for Captaincy. I'm sure we can think of a player that's going to end up on the shortlist from that one. Another one is Manchester City against Norwich. That's the biggest mismatch in all of the 10 fixtures. There is quite a few attacking players that we could pick from there, but it's who's going to get the most minutes. And the last one is Manchester United against Southampton. You'll see later on in the video that Southampton's defensive record isn't all that good, and Manchester United scored plenty of goals in game week 1 against Leeds. The first player that we're going to draft onto the shortlist is from that fixture. It's Bruno Fernandes. He scored a hat-trick in game week 1. The second player is Kevin De Bruyne. I had to pick a City attacker against Norwich. It was between him or Mahrez. We're unsure who's on penalties. We'll see that later on in the video, but I think he's the best option for Manchester City. And the last player on the shortlist is Mo Salah. He got a goal and an assist in game week 1. Before we move on to the next section, there's just a few players that I'd like to mention. There's Sadio Mane. If we're picking a Liverpool player, I'd like to pick the one on penalties, which is Salah. The same goes for Trent Alexander-Arnold. I also don't pick defenders because of the lower ceiling as well. Plus you've got Riyad Mahrez or any of the City attackers. It's just who's going to play the most minutes. It's really hard to predict. Out of all the attackers, it's actually De Bruyne who's got the highest expected minutes. Anyway, let's take a look at the non-penalty underlying stats per 90 minutes. To ensure that we've got an adequate sample size of data, this data is from last season and game week 1 from this season combined. De Bruyne tops the charts with 3.1 expected return points per 90 minutes. His finishing really let him down last season, so his return points are down to 2.5. He's really underperforming his underlying stats, but they're still level with Bruno. Not far behind him at the top is Salah for both expected return points and return points per 90 minutes. These figures display consistency and they're only 0.2 off the top. As you can see, Bruno's expected return points per 90 minutes figure is poor, but you've got to remember that this is based on non-penalty underlying stats, so that takes us on to the next bit nicely. The Portuguese is on penalty duty for the team that gets awarded by far the most penalties in the past few seasons in the Premier League. Not only that, he's the only player on the shortlist that's on all of pens, direct free kicks, indirect free kicks and corners. Whilst Salah's down for penalties and free kicks, that's direct free kicks. He doesn't take indirect free kicks or corners. I'm not even going to try and make any calls about De Bruyne's penalties. For me, it's a toss-up between him or Mahrez, or even whoever Pep fancies on the day, so we're not too sure about that one. He is the main man on all free kicks and corners though. Now let's take a look at the probability of each player scoring or assisting. The odds are based on each player playing 90 minutes. Don't worry, we'll still look at the expected minutes data later on in the video. Out of all the 3 players on the shortlist, Bruno has the worst odds by far, but to be fair they are indicating that the chances are he's probably going to get an attacking return. KDB and Salah are neck and neck for the odds of returning, but Salah actually wins on this one if we take into consideration the fact that you get 5 points for a goal and 3 points for an assist. Let's take a look at the points projections from the Fantasy Football Fix and Fantasy Football Hub algorithms. Once again, it's Salah that comes out on top. He's got an 8.4 points projection from Fantasy Football Hub. His fixed projection is still high but nowhere near in comparison. Whilst De Bruyne doesn't have the highest figure overall, he's got the highest fixed figure, and if you average both of them out, he actually comes out on top just ahead of Salah. I've got to say at this stage it is really not looking good for Bruno. Okay, so let's delve into the opposition's stats. I treated these stats like the other ones I used last season and game week 1 from this season. You might be wondering why Norwich's stats are on the screen if they played in the Championship last season. Well actually they've been converted with a 1.6 multiplier. I got this from FPL Review. They're the experts for creating data models in FPL. That's where I get the expected minutes data that I keep banging on about, and the odds data as well. Make sure you check them out, the link's in the description. As we can see, Bruno's opponents Southampton have the worst goals conceded with 1.8 per 90 minutes. As for De Bruyne, his opponents Norwich have the worst expected goals conceded per 90 minutes. That figure is exactly the same with 1.8. Norwich impressively conceded half a goal per game than their expected figure, while Southampton underperformed their underlying stats by almost 0.3 goals conceded per 90 minutes. While Salah's opponents Burnley look good in comparison, they're actually no angels themselves. These are poor defensive numbers. To put that into perspective, out of all the teams that remained in the Premier League from last season, they had the second worst expected goals conceded in the whole league. Judging by the clean sheet odds, Norwich have the worst chance of obtaining a clean sheet this game week with just 4%. Salah's opponents Burnley have twice as much chance of obtaining a clean sheet. It's not much more though, they're only on 8%, and then the Saints are almost twice as likely to obtain a clean sheet than the Clarets are. Initially you might be confused as to why Southampton's clean sheet odds are so high whilst the defensive numbers are so bad. I think it's the home advantage that's swinging it in this one. De Bruyne's playing at the Etihad, Salah's playing at Anfield, but Bruno's playing away from home, and let's take into consideration the fact that the fans are back in the stadium now as well. Before we make our decision, let's carry out a quick risk assessment just to test every player. I've got no concerns in regards to how much resting time each player has to recover before this fixture. They've all got at least 5 days of rest. That means it doesn't really matter that both red men played 90 minutes in the last match. If anything, those minutes go to show that they are match fit. Unfortunately, the same can't be said about De Bruyne, who only played 11 minutes in the first fixture. He's expected to play 65 minutes in this next fixture. To be fair, he is playing against Norwich at home, so I'm pretty sure 65 minutes could be very explosive. Salah and Bruno are both expected to pretty much play the whole match. Now it's time to make a decision. I thought Fernandes would put in a better case than what he did for the captaincy this week. Do you know what? I really like De Bruyne for the captain's armband this game week. He's playing at home in a nice easy favourable fixture against Norwich, but Salah's the best captaincy option for game week 2. I've put the main reasons on the screen for you. The main thing that did swing it for me was the expected minutes, and I do like the fact that he's nailed on penalties unlike De Bruyne as well. I want to know what you think about the graphs that are used on the screen. Do you prefer them or do you prefer the raw data numbers on the screen? Let me know in the comments section down below. Also, ask for anything that you'd like to see in the videos and I'll try and do that for you as well. I'll see you here again for game week 3.